Hello, team, and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video. And myself, Jonathan MS, Spaces Ukraine War news update for the 21st of August 2023. This is the second part of my news videos for today. Please excuse any sounds going on behind there. Our electrician's doing some remedial work on my house. And if it's too noisy, I will pause and then start again. Just a warning there. Okay, we'll go to the frontline segment for this news update to begin with, and not a great deal of news outside of really Robotna, maybe a little bit far to the north, and then a tiny bit in Bakhmut. So we'll go first of all to well, just a general comment. The army of the Russian Federation has serious problems of counter battery capabilities in all sections of the front, especially in the Zaporizhia direction, says the Institute for the Study of War American military think tank. Analysts report the units of the Russian armed forces are experiencing a shortage of officers due to the loss of manpower, and that privates are commanding some Russian companies that should be commanded by a junior officer. So that's two issues there to do with the kind of NCOs and officer corps, as well as the counter battery capability of the Russians, something that we have heard so many complaints about over the last 6 weeks. As I keep telling you on a daily basis, when you see 20 pieces of artillery taken out every single day, sometimes double that, sometimes a bit less, that is a consistent degradation of the ability for the Russians to hit back with their own artillery. And that is now being reported openly in the ISW. Here, so we go right to the northeast. If we look at my map, and my map's not been updated yet from yesterday, so that'll be done forthwith. But there is some gains for the Russians again up in this northeastern sector near Sinkivka, where they are pushing further to the south and looking like they are enveloping Sinkivka. In fact, there are claims now that the Ukrainians are blowing up bridges on the way into Kupiansk. There is now footage of that. There were claims of that yesterday. Footage is coming out, so you can expect bridges in the area to be blown up to stop the Russians from having quick advances in the Kupiansk or into Kupiansk, really. So that could indicate it's a little bit of a worry for the Ukrainians there. If they're starting to do that, then they are actually worried that the Russians are going to make some serious and meaningful advances towards Kupiansk there. Okay, as we come further to the south, so a long way further to the south, we're talking about now coming down past Kreminna to Spirna and the Seversk front line here. There were some losses for the Russians in terms of quite a bit of equipment there around Spirna. It looks like they have taken a heavy toll. Russian armored convoy obliterated in Spirna. Sorry, it's not Spirna, Spirna, I think, 15 kilometers northeast of Bakhmut. So a bunch of imagery coming out to show that they have had a bit of a rough time there. They've had a rough time there over the course of the last few months. Although they have made some advances, it has come at quite a cost. I'll save that for the full sort of frontline update, and then we're going to come down to the south of Bakhmut now in this area, where we have Klishchivka and Kurdyumivka, and in between those two we have Andriivka, this small settlement there. Now, there's been some activity around there. In fact, we've seen similar footage of lots of equipment lost around Bakhmut as well, to the south of Bakhmut, so around where we're talking about now. Tendal says Russians continue to frantically attack Klishchivka south of Bakhmut, but they have a huge problem. The Ukrainian positions overlooking the village from which any movement can be monitored and Russian troops effectively repelled, which, by the way, happens on a daily basis. This is something I've talked about lots. So the Russians are if they are supposedly trying to take back Klishchivka, and according to Syriac maps have regained Klishchivka, I think it's highly unlikely, because they'd just be the Ukrainians be shooting ducks in a barrel, shooting fish in a barrel there. Sorry, not ducks in a barrel. Nobody keeps ducks in a barrel. Due to the high losses, Tendar continues, Russians tried to outflank the Ukrainian advantage position by attacking from the north using 3 main battle tanks and 3 IFVs, and that is the footage that we've seen. That was of destruction of a lot of vehicles. I showed you part of that footage this morning. You can check that footage out by clicking on a link in my video to the first news piece video. But yeah, so the Russians are taking heavy losses in doing that. But a Ukrainian drone detected them approaching, and the following barrage of Ukrainian artillery smashed the 2 main battle tanks and 2 IFVs, destroying the Russian attack group, including scores of Russian infantry at those coordinates. We'll look at that later, but that is the footage there. They took quite a beating. And then Global War Monitor says the failed Ukraine attack on Andriivka, Donetsk Oblast, shows that Ukraine has more land south of Klishchiivka. I don't know what he's referring to in terms of a failed Ukrainian attack on Andriivka, or whether he's just talking about generally they have failed to securely take Andriivka, although the Russians have been pushed back to the railway line there. But what he's saying is that this area to the north, let's get back to that. I've got so many tabs here, trying to work out exactly what's going on. That area to the north is now firmly under Ukrainian control. I would suggest that is just there. Surat Maps has that as Russian-controlled area. Global War Monitor disagrees, and then goes on to say, so this is north of Andriivka, and then just south of Andriivka, this area there, Ukraine has advanced south of there in an attempt to bypass the Russian forces. 1 square kilometer has been added to the liberated status. So that is to suggest that the Ukrainians are having success, and this was kind of picked up as well by Deep State Maps there. They have had success both sides of Andriivka, which is good news for the Ukrainians in this area. We haven't heard too much Ukrainian success around Bakhmut or any. We've heard that the Russians have retaken Klishchiivka, but nothing really from the Ukrainians. Now, some success for the Ukrainians around the mine that we heard about a few weeks back. So this is now going past Avdiivka to the Krasnohorivka south of Avdiivka on the way to Mariinka and Krasnohorivka here. So this is the mine that Surat Maps has under Russian control there, and Andrew Perpetua doesn't. He had that as a sort of grey zone. Russians pushed right back there. They did take that mine for a little bit, and then they were sort of supposedly pushed out of there by just consistent shelling. Well, now it appears that the Ukrainians have gone back in there with mechanized equipment and cleared out the Russians. If they are still there, has pushed the Russians back from Krasnohorivka. So this might indicate that actually the Russians are further forward than Andrew Perpetua has them, and that they might still have been in control of that mine. However, the footage seems to show that the Russians are not so likely to be there anymore. South of Krasnohorivka, a pair of Ukrainian T-64 BVs from the 72nd Mechanized Brigade raided the Russian-held mine. So this is implying that that mine still is under the control of the Russians. Let's mute that, just in case there's massive music going on. So there is footage to show that the Ukrainians have taken back that mine. They're on site there, hitting various buildings and whatnot with tank rounds. Don't know that there's any actual evidence of the Russians being there, but nonetheless, if they were there, they're unlikely to be there now. So that's kind of supports. That's a video evidence to support the claim from Global War Monitor here that the Ukrainians have had success in that sector. Right, now moving on, we're going to just I'm going to look at this little bit of mapping. So this is an update to the trench maps. This isn't Brady Afric's maps, although he says as also seen by Brady Afric. His data, most new parts got added around Bilmac, Orange. He might be actually referring. This might be pulling on Brady Afric's work. Orange is last month's, Pink's this update. Okay, so let's have a little look at this. These are the front lines going across the Zaporizhia front line. Into probably Donetsk. I don't know exactly where it is, but what I wanted to point out is that they have been updating. The Russians have been continually updating the trenches. So these orange ones were built up last month and then pink this month, filling in the holes. I can make sense of that. These areas, I do wonder, because surely the Ukrainians can just bypass this. I imagine that's either Tokmak or Bilmak. and they can just bypass these trench lines. So I don't quite know what the point of those trench lines sitting on their end. These make a lot more sense. They traverse the entire area. Okay. Anyway, let's go on. Robotna. Lots of different claims about Robotna. Let's just to remind you where that is. If we zoom out and come to the southern front line, we have Velika Novosilka. I don't know, my computer's struggling with this. Velika Novosilka and Robotna there. Not heard anything about Velika Novosilka sector. It's all about Robotna and how much success the Ukrainians have had there. If indeed any, well, it does seem like they are sort of moving through Surat Maps is claiming that, yeah, the Ukrainians have taken some territory just to the east of Robotna. Global Warming says the village is now entirely a grey zone. And this is where the varying claims are coming in, like as to how much of Robotna is controlled by Ukrainians. Ukrainians advance further to the northeast of Robotna towards Verbove, 3.4 kilometers from Verbove. So that is now fairly close there. We have video evidence that the Ukrainians are entrenched in the central part of Robotna, at least. So they are at least in the center. Romanov, a pro-Russian source, says that Ukrainians have captured 50% of the village. That means I would assume that the rest is probably grey zone as opposed to just straight away being under Russian control. And then the latest is that Robotna liberation has been announced by the Russians. So some sources are saying that. Not all sources, though, it has to be said. Further success for the Ukrainians to the east of Robotna as well. So this is what Global War Monitor said earlier. Now this area, 2.4 kilometers from the next Russian town held south of Robotna. So they are flanking round, certainly on the eastern side. And then Fahed Jr. here says Russian sources report the collapse of the Russian army and that the village of Robotna is under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces. We await official confirmations. In my opinion, it was a matter of time. The collapse of one of the most fortified villages on the front, that the Russian army is in retreat anyway. They recorded the Ukrainian army's control of some strongholds east of Robotna village and improving their tactical positions in recent days. The Ukrainian army forces have bombed the positions of the army in Novopokrovka. That is just to the south of Robotna there. That's very important. If they can take that, then that is the Ukrainians are making some good progress in recent days. Which is practically the code to open the safe. The opening of the first line of defense in the direction of Tokmak, in the direction of Melitopol. I had drawn more or less the main line of defense in yellow to give you an idea. The Russian armed forces are in total panic, he says, because they are forced to send their reserves. He says to the, and I'll finish that in a second once I get his map up here. So, he sees Novopokrovka, Kopivka as a very important settlement for the Russians to hold on to, for the Ukrainians to take. But they are taking reserves, forced to send reserves to Kherson, to Robotna Verbove, to Vuhledar, so that's the Staromelnyivka, and also to Bakhmut, where the Ukrainian army are making advances towards Andrivka and South of Klishivka, thus doing the Russian army. Thus, the Russian army are risking another breakthrough. Also, he talks about Drozhnyanka, which is an area I said that there were some attacking previously, and that's between here, Robotna, and the Velika Novosilka area. So there is possibly another breakthrough there. So anyway, that's what's going on the front line. I will now close that so it's not eating up my computer too much, and we'll go on to military aid now. So here we have a lot of conversation about predominantly F-16s, as you can imagine from yesterday's news. So the Netherlands will provide 42 F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine after training our pilots and engineers, says President Zelensky. Now, there's some confusion over this, and I talked to you about this a little bit in my breaking news update yesterday. Here, Zelensky in the cockpit of one of the F-16 fighter jets that the Netherlands will supply to Ukraine. And next to him is Lieutenant General André Steur, commander of the Royal Dutch Air Force. The Royal Netherlands Air Force has only 24, says OSINT Defenders F-16s, which are currently operational, with an additional 18, which are non-functional, used for parts or ground training. So I have no clue where they're getting 42 from. So 42 was touted. I mean, it appears to me that the Netherlands are just giving all their F-16s, no matter what state they are in. So it can be a little misleading to say suddenly they're going to have 42 F-16s in the air. Likewise, as an addition to that, actually, John Ridge says here, Rutte, the Dutch premier, didn't give a specific number, hence the confusion. 42 represents the total inventory of the Dutch Air Force. Zelensky and Yermak both indicated they will receive 42 airframes from the Dutch, but this has not yet been explicitly confirmed by the Dutch government. So be warned there. And then he went to Denmark yesterday afterwards, and they've decided to transfer 19 F-16 fighters to Ukraine. So that is 61 in total, and that is giving a lot of joy to those pro-Ukrainian voices like myself. Closer to New Year, the first 6 planes will fly to Ukraine from Denmark, said the Prime Minister of Denmark. More than 70 people from Ukraine are already training and preparing to study in Denmark. So this is huge. And hang on. Hello? Yeah, I'm doing a video. Oh, hi, Vlad. Oh, it's Vlad. Right, you've already destroyed 137 F-16s. Oh, wow, that's good. Oh, well done, Vlad. That's really impressive. And what? You yourself took out Zelensky. Zelensky was flying one, was he? And you took him out yourself. Oh, well done, Vlad. You're a clever lad. Anyway, look, I've got to finish this video. Just you carry on with your despicable war and sanctioning war crimes. It's fine. We'll just write you off in history. Take care, Vlad. Bye bye. Dick. So, as you can imagine, the Russians are going to be talking about how this is a massive escalation. In fact, they're already saying that. The Russian government is saying that. It is not an escalation. It is Russia are using all sorts. They're using pretty much everything bar chemical weapons and nuclear missiles. So to say that Ukraine can't defend themselves with similar stuff is ridiculous, and to say to use equipment to defend themselves is escalatory, I think is a ridiculous thing, and we all know that. But they will, of course, say that, and you will see the claims that F-16s are shot out of the sky before they even get there. I'm sure, in the same way that we saw Bradleys being destroyed before they're even in Ukraine. Anyway. Euromaidan Press here says, while the most experienced pilots perform combat tasks on older Soviet fighter jets, a new generation of Ukrainian pilots departed for F-16 and Gripen training. Quote, the pilots who graduated this year went to study in the UK. As for Sweden, pilots who graduated in 2016 have sufficient experience, went there. So this is the idea that actually they're already in Sweden training on Gripens. I don't know if that's definitely the case, but things, as ever, could be happening under the radar without us knowing. And then we're moaning about F-16 here and Gripen there, and actually they've already been doing stuff on them while everyone in the information space is having a right old ding dong. Right, Oryx, who is the visual confirmation database for equipment losses and also equipment gains, is of Dutch. He's Dutch himself, the main guy. So Oryx is obviously pretty proud of the Dutch right now, and rightly so. So they have, considering they don't have an awful lot of stuff themselves, or they do a lot of facilitating Ukraine getting stuff by paying for it, but they're also giving a whole bunch of things themselves. So 42 F-16, 2 mine hunters, 16 RHI-Bs, AGM-84 anti-ship missiles, 2 Patriot SAM launchers, 85 tanks, 220 plus APCs, 800 plus vehicles, 164 drones, 15 radars, 120 mobile anti-aircraft guns. I mean, plus. So the Dutch have actually done a pretty good job. Okay, discussion among members of the German government regarding the supply of Taurus missiles continues. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine has stated, in other words, this is like the Leopard tanks you know, Mark II. Uh, we hopefully Taurus will get there, because I'm not sure of the stocks of the Storm Shadow missiles and Scalp that Ukraine have. I don't know how long they can continue to fire them at the rate they have been. In fact, I don't know if they slowed down. I haven't seen so much footage and claims of Storm Shadow operations in the last week or two. The you know, compared to what we had seen previously. Germany has proposed to allocate 5 billion euros in aid to Ukraine every year, says the German Finance Minister Christian Lindner. This was announced by him. He said during a discussion with citizens in Berlin as part of the German government's Open Day. That's good news. Germany have really started to get, well, they are coming up trumps for sure, in a really positive way. So this is Shashank Joshi of The Economist, defense correspondent, saying, well, okay. US officials have encouraged Ukraine to be less risk averse and fully commit its forces to the main axis of the counteroffensive in the south. Washington has also urged Ukraine to send more combat power to the south and stop concentrating on the east. I wonder whether that's true. And on the other hand, do you know what? Let Ukraine make a decision what they're going to do with the lives of their citizens and soldiers. Maybe, I don't know. But then, if the US officials are providing a lot of stuff, then and are involved in decision making, you know, it's all very involved stuff. Anyway, US officials say that US does not make enough ATACMS to supply the numbers that would make a significant difference to the battlefield, and because of concerns that their supply could escalate the conflict with Russia. I mean, the escalation thing is nonsense, and just build more. I'm sure it's not impossible. Yeah. According to CNN poll released this month, 55% of Americans now oppose more funding for Ukraine from Congress. This is a worry. While 45% supported a big reversal from overwhelming backing for Kyiv early in the conflict. There should be a big move by the Americans to fully educate the American public as to where the funding is coming from, what it looks like. Go and watch Perun's latest video on NATO funding and the US, and how the figure, exactly what I've been saying for a long time, and how much of the US support for Ukraine is actually supporting their own military by giving Ukraine a load of older stuff, and giving themselves renewed stuff, bigging up US industry, so on and so forth. There's just a really good video from Perun that dips into some of that rationale there. Really important, and I think the US need to do a much better job of educating the public in what those figures mean, how much funding the US has for its own military. Like, it's phenomenal, because I would imagine if I was just an average Joe in the US, and I was hearing this consistent US is giving X billion dollars of equipment to Ukraine, unless I was told otherwise, I would assume that was money that was for schools and and hospitals or whatever, being taken out of the US budget and then just being given to Ukraine. And that is not what is happening. And it is so important to, I think, correct that idea, if that is indeed what people think, and I assume it would be what a lot of people think. It's not what is going on. But if people think that's what's going on, then their support for giving Ukraine continued assistance, will drop, because they think it's like a zero-sum game. It's like giving Ukraine stuff is not giving US people stuff, right? It's taking away from US people, and that's not necessarily what is going on there. Anyway, let's move on to geopolitical topics. Here we have rumors have circulated all summer that Mr. Zelensky's office may call early parliamentary and presidential elections. The logic is that it's better for him to seek re-election while he's still a national hero, rather than after being forced into peace talks. So this might be as a result of, the idea that some people think that the counteroffensive is struggling, it's not going as quickly as people were hoping, and so therefore call elections now, and he's more likely to get voted in than if there's a continued long war, drawn out phase where he might not be seen in such positive light. So this is probably, no matter what is going on in the in the military ecosystem and the political ecosystem of Ukraine, it would be advantageous for him. If I was Zelensky's advisor, I would say hold early elections, because you are, at the moment, you've got really good currency, so really good value. you will far more likely be voted in and give yourself then even longer to enact what your vision is. So I would say that's eminently sensible. When asked about the possibility of Ukraine conceding territory, Zelensky asked if Russia was willing to exchange Belgorod. I think this is such a good piece of rhetoric and should be continually the answer to anyone that says, "Hey, how about giving Crimea and then keep Russia happy? How about Russia gives us Moscow?" They're not happy to give us Moscow. Well, then sod off. Don't want to hear this. Go away. We are not giving. You can't have. It's like robbers coming into my house, burglars coming into my house, and then setting up shop in the lounge and going, "Actually, we're going to keep hold of this." And then the police saying, "Oh, I don't know about that. How about you give them the lounge, and then they might be happy, and then we can all go away, and we can call this all quits." It's like, that's my lounge, man. I'm not having burglars sitting in my lounge helping themselves to my stuff, right? It's not happening. Of course, I'm not going to give them my lounge. They've invaded it. So, yeah. Anyway, move on. Zelensky's address to the members of the parliament in Denmark. So Denmark have warmly received Zelensky, which is great, and are supporting. Some of these Scandinavian and Eastern European nations are really, really strong in their support for Ukraine, and that's absolutely fantastic. He says, "We believe in something completely different, and that's why we become stronger, all of us, together with you. We believe in ordinary human solidarity, and it actually makes it possible to destroy any column of any equipment, of any occupiers, because when people are on your side and when humanity is a value for you, and when your values coincide with the values of other people's, you will definitely find all the necessary weapons to defend yourself. Dear people of Denmark, Ukraine believed you when this evil invasion began, and I thank you for believing in us." Thank you to Zelensky for that good stuff. Excellent. Now, I talked about how Serbia were kind of warming a little bit to potential sanctions for Russia and siding a little bit more with Ukraine yesterday. Well, Serbia has now declared its readiness to help Orban, so Viktor Orban, the authoritarian leader of Hungary, who is very much a friend of Putin, with the transit of Russian gas bypassing Ukraine. Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó said that Serbian President Alexander Vucic promised the Hungarian Prime Minister to increase the transit of Russian gas if Budapest wants to increase purchases. There you go, bit of realpolitik going on to the east of Europe there. Kosovo has become the 20th country to join the group of sevens, the G7 declaration on security guarantees for Ukraine presented at the July NATO summit in Vilnius. Among the latest to commit were the Baltic states, Bulgaria, North Macedonia, and Greece. So this is all good solidarity for nations in the security guarantees presented at Vilnius. Good stuff. And finally, be interested to see any German opinion on this from my viewers. Yesterday, a pro-Russian demonstration took place in Köln. For English speakers, that's Cologne, Germany. The small demonstration of around 40 cars was greeted by two counter-demonstrations. It was a total flop for the pro-Russian organisers. They hoped to reach at least 200 cars. The counter-demonstrations were attracting more people. Today, the German Special Police, SEK, Spezialeinsatzkommando, stormed the house of the organisers. It is suspected that they were hiding weapons of war. Wow. Let me know what the outcomes of that were, and any information on that in the threads below. We'd all be really interested. I love the community here. We have people from all over the place giving their expertise of different aspects of this war, or different views from their position, geographical and political. I love it. It's a broad church here. I say that broad church as a non-religious person, but there is a broad church here, and I welcome you all, as long as we have good constructive conversation that is substantive and respectful. Anyway, that's enough blathering for me. Take care, everybody. I will hopefully speak to you later. A bit of a crazy day. I'll see what I can do. All the best. Toodle pips.